Good morning everyone, welcome to our writing lesson. Today the ally is to use metaphors and similes. Now unfortunately I had a problem with uploading this video on Tuesday and I did get lots of emails, people asking where to find it. So what I've done is I'm re-recording it. For some reason it got lost in cyberspace. I can't be found, so I'm re-recording the lesson for you today. So we will begin this lesson with reading some of the poetry that people have done in class. In class or at home. So first of all, let's look at these two pieces of poetry. Christoph wrote swoosh zip. Swoosh, knock, creak, zip. The sun rises higher and higher like a huge ball on fire as the children play. Playground, playground, playground. The wind is as wild as a wolf, swinging on swings. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The banging rope was as hard as a metal. Knock, knock, knock. The pebble creaks under my feet like a rusty door in an old house. Creak, creak, creak. The sun rises higher and higher like a huge ball of fire as the children play. Playground, playground, playground. Well done, Christoph. He's used lots of poetic devices in there. Did you recognise any? Onomatopoeia, similes, rhyme. Were there any others that you were able to recognise? Well done, Christoph. Jacob in school wrote this poem. I have an invisible unidragon. He's such a savage beast. He swims through the ocean all day and night, flying to hunt his feast. My unidragon is secretly stealthy. He hides in shadows all day. Why? He is under you and you wouldn't know. Well done, Jacob. So there we go. People writing their own version of poems and using the poetic devices, which is great. On the left-hand side here, I cannot remember who wrote this one, so I'm going to read it. It's called Thump, Howl, Swoosh, Crunch. The thumping of the thunder. Thump, thump, thump. The salty water is carried with the wind. Howl, howl, howl. The gulls soar higher and higher than the highest cloud. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The crunchy sand. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The waves were crushing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The thumping of the thunder. Thump, thump, thump. Oh, I forgot to read Getting Louder. Apologies. And on the right hand side, I'm going to read one verse of this because I'm struggling to see the text, but it is very well written. This is done by Sophie and it's called Rathers. I know very well what I'd rather be if I didn't always have to be me. I'd rather be a penguin, a white and black penguin, a bright furry penguin in the freezing frosty Arctic. I'd take my dinner in Catfish Town, and wouldn't I gobble them all down if I were a bright furry penguin and didn't always have to be me. Brilliant work, Sophie. So there you go. People using poetic devices in their own versions of poems. So very well written, and I must say it's been a great joy to read your poetry. It has brought a smile to my face and made me laugh many times. So thank you very much everyone for producing such interesting and poetic poems. So everyone is using different poetic devices. Some have mastered all of the poetic devices. Metaphors are the most difficult ones to master. Okay, so you will need your pencil and paper or pen and paper. Here's a poem. I'm going to read it. Now you can see this poem is full of errors. Can you find 8 errors in this poem and make the corrections? Choose any 8 that you like. So I'm going to read the poem. You can find the words that you want to correct. I have poetic license. I have poetic license. I write the way I want. I drop my full stops where I like. My capital letters go where I like. I order from my pen. I verse the way I like. I do my spelling right. According to my mood, I have poetic license. I put my commas where I like. My brackets are right. I repeat when I like. I can't go wrong. I look and I see. It's right. I'll repeat when I like. I have poetic license. Don't question me. Well, there you go. Poetic license to do whatever you want. Have you been able to find 8 errors? I'm going to continue in a moment. I know some people might be scribbling away, trying to get the 8 errors down. It's totally up to you. You can press the pause button if you like and restart when you're ready to go. So I'm going to move on because this is our writing session and we will start with our quiz. So in front of you, is this a simile or metaphor? My big brother is a couch potato. Simile or metaphor? That girl is as tough as nails. Simile or metaphor? The snow was a blanket covering the ground. Simile or metaphor? She is as thin as a toothpick. Simile or metaphor? Right, I think you've been able to keep up with me. So let's mark those 4 right now. My brother is a couch potato. There's no like or as in it. Has to be a metaphor. Big brother is being compared to a potato. A couch potato. A couch potato normally is someone who doesn't do much. They just lie around, a little bit lazy, not doing much. So it's really saying my big brother is very lazy, just lies around. That girl is as tough as nails. It has as in it, so it's a simile. It just really is a phrase for saying that girl is really tough. As strong as nails, which is made of metal, so she must be very strong or tough. The snow was a blanket covering the ground. It's a metaphor. So they're comparing the snow to a blanket that's covering the ground. So really what it's saying is the whole area or ground is just covered in snow. And they're saying that covering of snow is like a blanket. She is as thin as a toothpick. Simile, it has as in it. And she is thin as a toothpick means that the girl is very thin. We could use the word skinny. Let's move on. Did you get 4 out of 4? Are you beginning to recognize your similes and metaphors without having to think too much about it? If you are, great. Because as you read, you'll recognize them very quickly and you go, aha, yes, I know what that means. So you have to also understand when you see the phrase, what does that phrase actually mean? It's all part of reading and understanding. Okay, so here we have similes on the left, metaphors on the right. If you recognize similes and metaphors, the next step really is, do I understand what they mean? Her heart is like gold, her heart is gold. Now a heart is not gold, but why would they compare the girl's heart to gold? Gold is very precious. It's valuable. So really what they're saying is, that person is very kind, very generous, a really good friend. Something like that. Number 2, the world is like a stage. The world is a stage. Well, those 2 really mean that people behave or perform differently at different times of the day, or it depends on who they're with. Sometimes they're with certain people, they're very serious, and when they're with other people, They're very humorous. They do a lot of laughing, a lot of joking. And that's what they mean by the world is a stage. We have personalities and our mood or our feelings change. So therefore our behavior changes. Depending on where we are, who we are with and what we're doing. He eats like a pig. He is a pig. Well, that just basically means pigs are quite messy animals. People don't like pigs because they eat virtually anything. If you throw it on the ground, pigs will normally try and eat it. So that could be talking about the person is dirty or unhygienic, or they could be referring to as they eat very greedily or very messily. So that's what it normally means. So it could be that someone's untidy or dirty or unhygienic, or when they eat very greedily. They may be shoving food into their mouths and it looks awful. So they call them a pig. Not very kind though, is it? You are like a rock. You are a rock. That really say you. If you say that to your friend, just say you are the best friend possible. I can rely on you. You are the best friend in the world because you care about me and you're very kind and helpful and reliable. That's what it basically means. Your eyes are like sunshine. You are my sunshine. I think you could figure that one out for yourself. Sunshine is lovely and warm and bright. So if you say someone's eyes, if you compare them to the sunshine, I think you could work that out. So it's a very positive thing to say about a person. Poor as dirt. Well, poor as dirt basically means that someone is very, very poor. So they don't have any money or very, very little money. Sea of sand, we could say the desert is a sea of sand because wherever you look, all you can see is sand. So you can compare those two and say the sand is like a sea because that's all you can see. Let's move on to the next slide. So get to know your similes and metaphors, but also develop your understanding of what do they mean. Right, we've done the dragonfly before in a reading comprehension, so you know about the dragonfly. So reeds and rushes, I've got a little image there for you. They grow in the water by a river or a lake or stream, a bit like grass, although they're not grass apparently. So that's the place where the dragonflies like to live, close to the water, amongst the reeds and the rushes. And then the sun's soft fingers, well, the sun doesn't have fingers, so therefore it's given human characteristics. It's a metaphor. The sun doesn't have soft fingers. But it's one way of saying the sun is really lovely and warm and enjoyable. So they use that phrase to put a picture in your mind of how wonderful the sun is. And the dragonfly definitely loves the sun. Let's move on to think about metaphors. Well, you know metaphors. You take something that's not alive, that's not human, and give it human characteristics. The sun is not a living thing, and it doesn't have soft fingers, but we put those two together to create a metaphor, to create a picture in the reader's mind. And we call that imagery. Similes, you're familiar with them now. You're comparing one thing to another. And there's lots of similes in the poem. You can see they're all in red. Wings are like water, as sharp as two swords. Eyes are like glass, as round as the moon. So you know similes by now. Also, make sure you understand what they mean when you read them. So all the similes are in red. Repetition, that's the repeating of a word or a phrase or sentence. They're coloured in blue. So that helps to emphasize a feeling or a character or an idea. And it helps with the rhythm of the poem. So I am a dragonfly in verse at the beginning of verse 1. I am a dragonfly, the beginning of verse 2. I am a dragonfly at the beginning of verse 3. Very important, it's part of the structure of the poem. And what is the structure of this poem? Well, it's got 4 lines in each verse. And the first line is always, I am a dragonfly. Sorry. Okay, and then punctuation. This poem only has commas, full stops, capital letters, and lowercase letters. So where do the capital letters start? They always start with I. It happens to be I am a dragon, that part. And then all the rest of the letters at the beginning of the line are lowercase, which means, and I live on the breeze between the reeds and rushes and the sun's soft fingers. The first words in each line are not capital letters, they're lowercase letters. And once again, the punctuation is important for the rhythm of the poem. So the commas control the speed that the reader can read at. And also it gives them a chance to pause so the listener can gain an understanding of the poem as it's been read. So I am a dragonfly and I live on the breeze. Pause. Between the reeds and rushes and the sun's soft fingers. Stop. I am a dragonfly and my wings are like water. Pause. Or as sharp as 2 swords cutting the air into pieces. Full stop. So there you go. Punctuation controls the speed of the reader, as well as gives the reader a chance to use expression, and it gives the chance for the listener to understand what's been read. So let's move to your task. So I'm not going to explain this task too heavily because you're familiar with what comes next. So in the dragonfly, it is the animal in the poem. So you need to select an animal for your poem. So think of an animal, one that you're interested in, one that you really like. That will take the place of the word dragonfly. So if you chose, for instance, gorilla, it would be I am a gorilla. Next activity in task 1, jot down where they live and describe it. Because in the dragonfly, in the first verse, we find out where the dragonfly lives. And in the other 2 verses, we find out about different things or different parts of the dragonfly. So your next job, after jotting down where they live and describe it, you have to name 2 parts of the body belonging to your animal. So the dragonfly, in verse 2 it's about the wings, and in verse 3 it's about the eyes. So you need to think of 2 body parts that you will want to add into your poem. And then the difficult one is think of a metaphor for the sun. Well, you might think, I don't want to be in the sun, I want to be by a lake. So you'd have to think of a metaphor for lake. It will depend on where your animal is as to what you put on line 4 in verse 1. Okay, so if you chose the location as the lake, then you'd have to think of a metaphor for the lake. Good luck with that, because metaphors are more difficult. So compare the lake to something that it's not. Like the lake screamed out as the water splashed. Something like that. Okay, then what comes next? You have to write similes for verse, not 1 and 2, but it's actually verse 2 and 3. Similes for verse 2 and 3. So in the dragonfly, its wings are like water, as sharp as 2 swords. What's your body part going to be? If it's legs, then, and my legs are like, and as fast as. So you have to choose your simile based on, or write your simile based on your body part. And then below that, you have to use alliteration in verse 2 and 3. Like in verse 1 they use reeds and rushes, wings, water, sharp, swords. So see if you can use alliteration in the verses. And down below you have your template. So what's your title going to be? That'll be based on the animal you select. Verse 1, line 1, I am, what animal have you chosen? So if, like I use the example of gorilla, that would be I am a gorilla, and that'll be at the beginning of verse 2 as well. I'm not going to try and explain the rest, but if you go to line 2, and I live, where does your animal live? Where does it live? And then line 3 and 4, they go together. They live between. Is it the woods and the lake? It'll be up to you to decide. So I'm going to leave it there because you are familiar with how you need to write your own version of a poem. And everyone, I would say 95% of the people who've done the poetry have been able to copy the structure of the poems that we've done so far. So take your time. The good thing to do is to plan before you try and write it. That's why it's a draft copy. With a draft copy, you think, you write something down, you may not like it, you erase it, and then you add something else. So editing is important because if you have time, you might have time to type it up on the computer or to write it out neatly. If you don't have time, don't worry. You can only spend a certain amount of time on this work. And I can see by the work that you're doing, everyone's spending lots of time. And I am thankful for all your earnest efforts and your dedication to doing your work. So thank you very much. But if you don't have enough time or you've done far too much time already, just stop it and email your work in. So email your work to yr3@grange.harrow.school.uk. I look forward to reading your poetry. What I've received so far has been absolutely a joy to read. So thank you very much for your dedication and participation. Bye for now.